Hello everybody, George Marrero here once again. I just want to share a short story, something I remembered when I was doing my bachelor's degree. I remember that Professor Petra Colón in the university, today it's called the UTC, Universidad Teológica del Caribe. Back then it was a Bible college when I studied there in the 90s. And I remember that Professor Petra Colón told us, in one of the topics of the class, that kids, are kids just as ourselves when we were kids. We don't learn just from our parents, we learn from our teachers, we learn from what we see in television, we learn from our friends, because our friends and when we're hanging out with them when we're young, they're gonna have an opinion, and we're gonna listen to them, and we're gonna learn whether what they're telling us is correct or not. We're gonna learn something. And what she was sharing is our kids the same way learn in that manner. You're gonna learn from the television. The kids today have social media, internet, all this stuff that we have today, all the technology. And so there's more than one person teaching our kids, sometimes, or we normally, right, educate our kids, teach them what we know, and they'll come up with some idea from a friend. I'm laughing because I remember my son, I was telling him something once, and he told me that his friend Luigi, as he used to call him, they were kids back then, like maybe 7, 8 years old. And he said, Luigi told me that's not true. When I first told him what I told him, he just stopped and was quiet. And I was thinking to myself, true story, I was thinking like, wow, I really hit the ball out the park, He's quiet. He must be deeply thinking on what I'm saying. And then he, after being quiet for a few seconds, said, that's not true. Luigi said that's not true. And so I remember that. And it makes me laugh. But anyway, I'm bringing up this story to say that even though to the parents, right, that we give our kids advice, and if any kid out there, any of you guys have a kid that might be, walking in a path you don't want him or her to be walking, and you feel that you didn't do a good job, I just want to say this, man. I was a young man that got in a lot of trouble, a lot of violence, and I ended up going to prison, right? And you don't want your kids in that environment, in prison, etc. But the reason I'm bringing this up about how we learn and what our parents tell us and what we tell our kids is because when I was incarcerated, all the advices, all the words of advice that I received, whether from my mother, because my father wasn't around, whether from people that was giving me advice, the people that did, even homeboys, even friends, yo, G, you better chill, man. They're gonna kill you. You go to prison. Anyway, long story short, all the words of advice throughout my bed, depending on a situation, I would remember a certain story that I was told, a certain, words of advice, and I would connect any situation to that advice that I was given at one time in my life coming up. I would say, wow, this is what they meant. This is what, my mother meant. This is what the preacher meant. This is what my homeboy meant. So the words that you give your child, even though they may seem not to be doing nothing, they're there. They're doing an effect in his or her life. And I could imagine if I didn't have somebody giving me words of advice, and the people that did give me words of advice, I could imagine if I didn't have those positive conversations with people at one time that I was not listening to them. But there came a time when those words came back up, to my mind, and I remembered, and and I learned from them. I might have not learned from them at the moment they were given to me, but I learned from them later on when I was in a situation that allowed me or caused me to remember what I was told, and I was able to understand and learn from that advice. So I'm just saying this to say that, you know, you may feel you're not going nowhere with your child, but trust me, somewhere along the line in life, those words are gonna reach them or her, like I said, and they're gonna understand where you're coming from. So I just wanted to share this thought. Again, I'm the author of Willing to Change by George Marrero, and I mentioned my book because I would like for anyone that's listening to this, and it's a story you could, my book, it's a true story, my story, that you could purchase on Amazon and read and share with your kids. You could share the story with them if they don't want to read it. You could buy it and give it to somebody if you have a child that's incarcerated. You know, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna close with this. I know a guy that's doing life. He's never coming home. He killed a few people one night in an armed robbery. He read my book and he gave me feedback, and he thanked me for my book, and you know, it impacted his life. Sadly, in his situation, he's never coming home. But there's young people in the prison system that will be coming home one day, and it's a story that could impact people that are incarcerated in whatever situation they're in. But it's also a story that could impact young people before they even go in. And like I said in one of my last videos, retired correctional officer told me, he said, I read your book, it's a powerful book, and it's not just for people that are incarcerated. He told me, he said, I think it's for everybody. Everybody should read this book. So again, Willing to Change by George Marrero. You could purchase your copy on Amazon. If you go in my YouTube channel or TikTok, you're gonna see that, you're gonna see the cover, you're gonna see information about the book. So, you know, look for G Marrero in TikTok, and YouTube, George Marrero. I have it under my channel, is under Willing to Change, which is the title of my book. So have a great day, be blessed, and I hope I could hear some feedback from you guys.